Welcome to the unlucky 13th episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, we will be discussing, because of all of the upcoming holiday travel and stuff that very many of us will be doing, tabletop gaming on the road. I am Adam.
I'm Matt.
And we are part of Milk Can, and we make GameFor. GameFor is a app for connecting tabletop gamers. It's for iOS, it's for Android, it's also on the web. And it is designed to help you be able to find events and stores and groups and clubs and other players
and
conventions
yep.
in your local area.
Yep, free to use.
Yeah, absolutely. I just got to adjust my microphone touch. All right, there we go. So yeah, what have you been doing since the last episode?
I finally got my D&D on last night. So
oh, I see what you're saying.
Lots of D&D, yes. So I had picked up a lot of stuff in the past 2 weeks since our last session. Specifically from GameFor and some Kickstarters. So
right, you got that cool map.
Yeah,
thing.
the immersive battle maps from Yarrow Studios, Yarro Studios. About 30 different maps that have the 1-inch grid already on them.
But they're like in a cool book.
Yeah, there's a book and it opens up and it basically lays flat pretty much on every page. Looks great.
Yeah.
It was a little behind, not because of the publisher's fault at all.
It was a shipping thing.
It was shipping and distribution issues and stuff like that. But to their credit, they've been awesome with giving communication to the community and even giving some free PDFs and stuff for upcoming Kickstarters and everything else. So amazing Kickstarter. I would definitely recommend supporting them going further. I think they've got a sci-fi version coming out next.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that's cool.
And then I got templates for 3D printed templates for
spell effects and stuff
area
like
of effects
that.
and stuff that works, and that worked remarkably well.
We picked those up. Well, you picked those up when we were at Con a couple weeks ago.
10 for $5 or something.
And they're just little blue, weren't they blue?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, the ones I picked were blue, but
Yeah.
they were the different rectangles for a 5-foot radius or 10-foot or
a cone of effect.
Yeah, so
and you just lay them down on the mat and then see exactly where the spell is and where it isn't, which is really cool.
Yeah, it worked really, really well.
Yeah.
And then I picked up a bunch of cards from Nord Games. They have luck dice and critical hit, and critical miss decks and stuff like that.
Oh, cards.
Just to kind of give you a little bit more flavor on your 20s and 1s.
Yeah.
So we tried that out. We're still kind of trying to figure out if we like it, if it overcomplicates or slows down combat too much or not.
Right.
So we're still on the fence about that. I think the cards are very nicely done. The quality is great. We're just not sure if it works with our style yet or not. So we're going to try it out some more. But
Yeah, that makes sense.
How about you?
I have not been doing much of anything, honestly, other than cleaning and organizing the basement. On the notes here, it says
That's a strange hobby.
It says sad face emoji. Yeah, no, it's a crap hobby. Honestly, it's not great. I've decided that I need to get things in the basement organized and cleaned. We've been living in the house almost 10 years, and so it's just a situation of if I go downstairs and I work on models and I'm working on miniatures and that kind of stuff or terrain or whatever, I'm not cleaning anything, and it's the area that I have to actually hobby in is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and so it kind of got to a point where I was planning on starting it in the new year, and doing that, and I talked about this on my YouTube channel just recently, but then my mom fell down and she screwed up her knee, broke her femur, and so
how's she doing now?
She's now. They did actually find a break finally. Initially, when we went in, they x-rayed her and they're like, "Well, there's nothing wrong," and then they sent her home. Sent us home, and then it got worse and worse, and then we went back, and then they did find actually that she does have a break on her femur. It's called an avulsion fracture. Anyway, so now she's at a rehab place doing, being taken care of and doing some physical therapy and all that kind of stuff, and she's got a big huge brace on her leg because they don't do casts anymore. Technically, it's mostly because of it. And the doctor said it was because they weigh too much and you can't clean underneath them. And I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I just was so I've been trying to I've been taking out bags of garbage, and there's not a lot of garbage in there, but there's a lot of
Clutter.
Cardboard boxes.
Oh, cardboard.
So many cardboard boxes.
I can't see you having a lot of cardboard boxes.
No, there's not. Yeah, not a ton of them here at the office either.
No.
But yeah, so it's a lot of that, and me trying to figure out ways to put up more shelving, so I've got more places to keep things, as opposed to just coming down to the basement, going, well, I'll just set this here. You know what I mean? Which is what I've been doing for years now. And so I'm trying to fix that up. But I would really rather be building tiny little people and doing that stuff.
Yeah.
But hopefully I can start doing it again soon.
It's the dark side of the hobby.
It is dark. It is. It's not the fun part, definitely, for sure.
Well, we hope your mom feels better soon. And
Yeah. I think she'll probably be there for a couple of weeks at the very least, maybe a bit longer.
Yeah.
So
okay.
but yeah. But talking about family and talking about travel and stuff like that, because it's just about Thanksgiving.
Or
here
just
in the
after
United
for
States.
the Canadians, I believe.
Right, the Canadians have theirs in October.
Yep.
Early October, I think. And then, Christmas and all that kind of stuff, whether you...
And New Year's. And
Right. I mean, whether you really celebrate that stuff or
Hanukkah.
not, Hanukkah, all that kind of stuff. The end of the year seems to be for us.
Right.
Like in China, it's more of a February thing.
Right.
With the Chinese New Year, and that's a whole different story. But I don't know that
Right,
we
yeah. You can use
necessarily
this
have
year,
a lot of
these
Chinese
tips
listeners.
year
maybe.
round. But
I don't know. Maybe we do.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any in the analytics. But nonetheless, there's a lot of travel that's going to be going on. And so because of that, we wanted to talk today kind of quickly about traveling with your hobby, traveling with games, traveling with... and we want to talk about all the different types, as far as all the different genres.
right.
They're
Each
all
one
a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of has their own thing.
Yep.
So there's really mainly two main ways
To travel.
to travel. I mean, in this situation, I guess, that we're going to talk about.
Right.
And that's ground and that's air. So you may be driving, you may be taking a train, but that's still very different for the most part than going by air.
Right.
Have you had to travel by air for family stuff much?
Not recently. Family's starting to get to that size where it's almost prohibitive to fly. So
Oh, your
with all
immediate family, right? Yeah.
And
that's a
then
good point.
most of our families within a drivable distance.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. No, that's true.
But apparently my brother's possibly getting married in the foreseeable future, and they're doing a destination wedding, so they'll be traveling there for sure.
that'll
So
be fun.
by air.
Where's that going to be?
It's probably someplace warm, I think.
Well,
is what
that would be better than
told,
say
yeah.
someplace cold, I guess. I don't
Yeah, no, not Siberia. No,
No.
Siberian weddings this year.
Yeah, that seems like a bad idea. But so when you are traveling by air, obviously space is at a medium or premium. You have
Right.
only so many bags you can carry on
And weight.
all that and weight as well. We've done a little bit of that with when traveling to shows. Like we bring along, bring extra bags and keep our marketing stuff and all that jazz in there. Like this year when we go to the Gamma Trade Show, we're probably going to have to ship that big thing.
Yeah,
with the backdrop and all that stuff. That's kind of a deal. So, for those of you who aren't having to ship anything giant to go to where you're going, but you still want to take some games, you still want to take something that makes you happy that way. There are kind of different ways to do it. Now,
like travel games. Yeah, they're usually not.
There are a lot of travel games out there like Travel Monopoly or Travel Connect 4 and stuff like that. And that's...
They basically take games that are not usually great to begin with and make them somehow a little bit worse.
Yeah, to some degree. They make them a bit smaller. They make them... I mean, I understand, like, if you're in the car for a long time and you and your siblings really love Sorry, I guess maybe being able to find Travel Sorry so that the pieces don't go all over the place.
Right.
That's maybe... But in general, we're not talking about something you're playing while traveling particularly. Right. We're talking about, like, you're taking it to the place you're going. And it may not even be for family. You may be just going to a convention.
Or you're working.
Or you could be going for work, yeah, absolutely. But the travel versions of games that you do see sometimes, like at the big box stores, like your Targets and your Walmarts and stuff like that, are not great, in my opinion.
Right.
And they're also generally aimed at the very mainstream type games. You don't see, is there a Travel Settlers of Catan? Honestly, that game there might be.
There might be.
There's so many versions of it, but I don't know. I didn't look into that.
Probably Pandemic, too. When we talk about
Pandemic's actually a pretty small box. We're actually going to
true.
talk about that. So small card games are a great thing to bring when you are going to be traveling if you want to be playing some games. and they can be anything from something that's a little bit more kind of pseudo collectible, like we like to play Keyforge.
Yep.
So that's like, because you're not having to bring a huge deck or a deck box too much even necessarily, you can throw into your luggage a couple of decks of Keyforge. There's 36 cards per deck.
Right.
Like, you're pretty much done.
You should be able to bring
a couple of small decks. They're smaller than a normal playing card deck.
Right.
Because a normal playing card deck is 52 or 54?
52.
Okay.
Well, 54 if you count jokers.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Yeah. So, that's a relatively easy thing to chuck into your luggage or backpack, your carry-on, as it were. Also, Coup, which is a great game for a bunch of players, whereas like
social deduction,
Keyforge is pretty much a one-on-one,
right?
But you can play Coup with maybe 5 or 6, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that.
I think that's so many.
One of our favorites, Sparkle Kitty.
Ooh.
So several years back, we were at a convention in Milwaukee, and we played. It was in the evening, and there was a games library, and we were trying to just find different games to play. And somehow we ended up. It was you and me and Jason, and we started playing Sparkle Kitty.
Well, I think it was kind of going on because there's a slot machine in Reno. It's called
Kitty Glitter. Yes, when we were in Reno for the convention, for the Gamma convention, there was this like single slot machine that was called Kitty Glitter, which
had
Jason's
lots of cats.
Wife really was enjoying playing.
And it just became kind of an in joke. So I think that was what made us go, "Ooh, Sparkle Kitty!" Here we go.
Yeah, it just kind of triggered something, and it was actually a pretty sort of fun.
We
game.
actually had a lot of fun.
The artwork was really cool and stuff like that. But again, it's like a small kind of deck, kind of card game, something that's not going to take up a ton of space, which I think is really useful. So yeah, those types of small card games or dice games even. Bang, the dice game. Like there's Bang, the card game, which can come frequently in a larger container, but the dice game is actually quite small.
Yeah, that's really small.
Roll For It by Calliope Studios is a favorite amongst my wife's family. I bought a copy of it at some show, and then I brought it over one time for something at the family on my wife's side, and we sat down and played. And that's a game that I think personally appeals to both the people who are used to normal kind of games, and then also people who are used to maybe slightly more. I don't know what the word is. Like, you've got your sorry in your life and stuff like
more
that. And
chance, push your luck.
Yeah, because it's got a chance kind of thing because you're rolling dice, but then there's also strategy about like, well, I'm going to hold on to this one. And if you, like, honestly, if you understand Yahtzee, it's like super Yahtzee a little bit, but still I think enjoyable from a person's standpoint where I'm like, I'm not interested in playing Yahtzee, you know?
Right.
And then there's like other board games, which are not dice games or card games specifically. They're a little bit more board oriented, but they just come in a smaller, easily stowable box. You know, bring like just one less set of underwear. You don't need all that underwear. And then throw turn it inside out. And then you can bring along something like Pandemic. That's we've got actually a copy of that here in the office, and that's got a really surprisingly kind of small box.
That was
Machikoro, which I think I might be pronouncing properly.
Yep,
that's also enough. That's not so much like a thin box, but it's
more squarey.
Well, but it's like it's still
compact,
small. It's compact. Whereas like the Pandemic box is a bit bigger. It's maybe 8x10 roughly, but it's real thin. It's a surprisingly thin.
It's
box.
only like a couple of stacks of paper. Yeah.
And that's the thing is when you're lugging these things around and trying to travel and go places, I think it's a smart idea to bring something that's going to take up a lot less space if you can.
Right. Yeah, and then another strategy for like board gamers that I've heard works well is that a lot of your games have kind of common components. So you know, a lot of games have some kind of money or some kind of tokens, dice, all that stuff. You know, you don't have to have 56 different meeples from 56 games.
Right.
You could, kind of part those out and just bring the boards, the separate boards, and then kind of, and any kind of specific pieces. But for the most part, you could actually kind of pare everything down for a travel.
Yeah, depending on the game and the size and all that kind of stuff, as long as you are smart about it and maybe put the pieces in separate like little Ziploc bags, which I have a tendency to do on the very few board games that I do anyway. You could actually mix a couple of board games into a single box.
Right.
And then that's saving you space as well.
Yeah,
you know?
you'll want to probably track what you did, but so you can put them back. But yeah.
Well, yeah, that's why I keep things separate.
Yeah.
With the Ziplocs.
But when they might get combined when you're playing.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, that's very true. Labeling, I think, would probably be pretty smart in that situation. Basically, any kind of board game that is going to have basically like no miniatures or almost no miniatures is something that usually is in a small enough box that's easy enough to travel with. So, yeah, those types of things are things to think about. And to be perfectly honest, there are plenty of kind of board games that sometimes you can even just play on your iPad.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like it's a game, and I'm not even talking about playing single player. You can play like a bunch of us can be sitting around the table and just be playing on a single iPad.
Right.
I can't think off the top of my head of one that I know. The one that I've played in the past is called Neuroshima Hex, and that was kind of fun. I know that there's Ticket to Ride.
Ascension's a good one.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you can bring 10 boxes or however many boxes Ascension's up to now. With just your digital device.
Yeah, and I know, like I said, I know Ticket to Ride. I don't know about Carcassonne. My wife and I used to play Carcassonne a lot on the Xbox, but I don't know that it's
I've got it on iPad.
Do you? Okay. And so if you can just kind of sit around and, like, just those of you being around the iPad and me playing the board game, it's kind of cool that way. You can sometimes also, we talked about combining the board game pieces. And so, yeah, another thing about traveling by air, if you're into RPGs, let's say you're going to be getting together with your cousins or whatever, and maybe they already play some RPGs and you guys are going to get together, do some one-shots or whatever. Or maybe you've been playing on Discord or online, for quite a while, and now you're going to get to play in person, and that's fun. RPG stuff in general doesn't take up a ton of space. Maybe a couple of books, some papers, some dice, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
as long as you don't go whole hog,
Right, and like for like my DM stuff, I usually have a lot of that on iPad version as well.
Right. Yeah. Again, that's an easy way to have tons and tons of books and resources available, basically in one very thin little piece of. I was going to say silicon, but that's not exactly technically true. But
yeah,
it is sort of. The issue that I have found in my travels recently. Is that every time that I've been pulled over by the TSA, trying to go through, TSA through security, they have pulled me over when I've had a gaming book in my bag.
Yeah, they're very anti-gamers when it comes to just you.
I don't think it's. I don't think they're doing it because there's a D&D book in my bag, or because I've got a codex for Warhammer 40,000. I honestly think it's because those books
are dense.
They're very premium material. The paper is very thick. And the thing you may not know about like fancy, thick, nice, full, glossy color paper is that it's got a high clay content in it. So when there's a high clay content in each piece of paper and then you stack a bunch of those pieces of paper together to make a book, Mr. X-Ray does not want to go through that nearly as easily.
Yeah, and it probably doesn't look good when it's detecting some kind of like plastic...
Well, it's not so much that, although I have been swabbed as well, for that. But no, like it's happened to me a couple of times when we were flying out to. Were we flying out to Reno last year, 2018? I know I got pulled aside because I had a D&D players or 5th edition.
Yeah, and that
book.
was like the second or third time by that point. I thought almost.
Well, no, the books that I got pulled over for previously were always
codex.
Yeah, like I like the person from the TSA is like digging through my like Death Guard like Nurgle codex, which is just filled with like horrific images of terrible diseased Space Marine troopers and whatnot, but they didn't care about that. They were, I think, honestly looking for, I don't know, razor blades, like slid in between the pages or something. The X-ray just doesn't seem to be able to go through those types of things. And also, I had a deck of, and you may get this also with some board game card things too, because again, high clay content. I had that too. I had a deck of, like campaign cards that go along with 40K in my bag.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that was a situation. Where they were like they looked through that too, because again I think it was just showing up as just like a white block or black block, I don't know, on the X-ray thing. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's something to keep track of and understand. If you know that you're going to be a little late for your flight or not as early as you ought to be, if you're going to be carrying some of these RPG type books, understand you may get pulled aside.
Right.
And again, that's pretty much just in America. I don't know if it's quite as robust of a security measures out in the other parts of the world. wargaming miniatures don't travel by air well unless they're very properly protected. And again, in this same situation, I've carried miniatures to go places and things like that, and I've used a nice case with laser cut foam from our. I'm a big fan of Battle Foam. I own a bunch of their stuff, and honestly, they came across and were like, again, it was pulled aside, and when they were opening the package, they were actually looking for the books. The miniatures they didn't care about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they said, was there anything sharp in here?
Well,
and
swords.
Well, I wanted to say, and I said yes, and she looked at me, and I wanted to say, well, it's a Chaos Army, but that she wouldn't have gotten that. So I was like, well, there's little plastic and metal miniatures in there, and some of them are kind of sharp. And then she looked at them. She literally peeled up the top piece of the foam and looked at them and was like, meh, and then found the book, and then that was what the problem was.
Got it.
But so your miniatures probably won't, trick the TSA or cause them to freak out as much as those books might. But the traveling with those is.
And you recommend carrying them with you, not.
I have generally had them as my carry-on. That being said, I went to not a convention, like a wargaming retreat out in Utah several years back, and I brought a bunch of models that year, and some of them I actually had to put in my regular. I did have an actual checked bag luggage, like a big hard case.
Oh, hard case, yeah.
Well, it was a hard case suitcase. It wasn't, and so I had my clothes in there and a bunch of other junk, but I also had a foam tray, and there was just a couple of larger models, but I wrapped them in shrink wrap as well. So I took saran wrap around the foam and wrapped them so they couldn't fall out. I stuffed extra ripped up pieces of foam in there to keep them so they would, and they made it through, but I didn't also. I remember actually being on the side of the plane and being at the window seat and seeing them load the stuff on, and my big suitcase that I only use in certain situations is bright red, and so I saw them put it on there, but they didn't chuck it like they do in those videos you see on YouTube where they throw the bags. So I think that helped.
Yeah.
But yeah, miniatures are tough, especially metal ones, because metal ones have a tendency to have more mass when they're thrown around, and then the glue connections can be a little bit more brittle. So,
what about hobby tools?
Again, relating to miniatures and stuff. Yeah.
If I want to go paint,
if you're going to be going someplace for business and you need to sit and paint for because you're in
a
hotel room at night. Yeah, no, I've got a good friend, and she does the same thing quite frequently. It's like X-Acto blades are kind of the big issue. Larger bottles of paint can cause trouble sometimes too, because they've got that thing about a certain amount of fluid.
Right.
That may have changed recently. They don't bust you so much for having a shampoo that's too big or whatever. That being said, I always take the small travel size stuff. But I wouldn't carry a big bottle of paint on the road. There would be no reason to. I would have smaller bottles generally. But the X-Acto blade part's the hardest, so you're going to need to keep track on that. Some people have, the way that X-Acto blades work, some people will take the blade and they will actually turn it around, because it goes in backwards, and then you screw at the back of the thing. You've got the little twisty thing at the back that tightens it down. Some people will loosen it up, take the blade out, slide it back in, put it in point first, and then on the X-ray it doesn't show like it has a blade specifically.
It doesn't look so threatening, maybe.
Yeah. So I don't know, but there are a lot of little tools sometimes. Little nippers, as they're called, for cutting the plastic off of the sprues.
Yep.
Those can also sometimes be problematic. So keep that in mind when you're traveling by air. All of these things, it's just much more difficult to travel by air and do these things than it is, say, by car. So if you are traveling by car, or potentially, if you're going by a train, again, you have a limitation.
Right.
With the amount of stuff you can bring, kind of like you do in air travel. But you don't have the,
not generally the weight and as much of a size, depending on how you're traveling.
Well, also the danger thing. They don't think you're going to try to take over the whole train with an X-Acto knife. You know what I mean? They're not looking for I don't think you get. I've never been on a train to travel someplace in America, like Amtrak or whatever. But I don't think you go through a metal detector.
I've been on Amtrak. Nope.
Yeah, no. So in that situation, that's not an issue. If you want to bring,
I wouldn't bring
D&D books.
Don't bring out the knife on the train.
Yeah, I could see that being a problem.
But if it's in the bag, I don't think that.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. But traveling by car, where it's your vehicle that you get to drive and nobody gets to X-ray you while you drive it, as far as you know. Bigger box games are easier to bring on the ground, but again, space may be a premium at the holiday destination when you get there.
Oh, yeah.
So if it is a holiday situation, you want to bring, what's a big game?
Twilight Imperium?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you wanted to bring Twilight Imperium, let's say you and your cousins or nephews or whatever love to sit down and play a good 6-hour game of Twilight Imperium, you're going to have to make sure you've got some space to play it at. You can't just be like, we're going to take over the dining room table, because they're going to be like, well, the turkey's got to go on there soon and all that jazz, right?
Right, yeah, like your Axis and Allies, like giant combined game.
Just the length of it and the space it takes up.
And the amount of time before you're able to clean up.
Right, yeah. So that's something to also consider. That's why smaller games in those situations might also be really helpful. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. It's easier to bring miniatures, obviously, by ground travel, because there's not TSA agents.
You can kind of control it, yeah.
Baggage handlers throwing your stuff around. And the hobby tools are also, like, if you, like, I have a portable nerding kit is what I refer to it as, and I made a video about it years and years ago on my YouTube channel about, like, when you want to go someplace, those little clear plasticky kind of clamshell style.
Yeah.
You know, like, people use them in crafts, and they have little compartments. You open it up, and there's a bunch of little compartments.
Or like fishing lures.
Yeah, for fishing lures, you see them at the, definitely tackle places and stuff like that. That's a great thing to be able to put a bunch of different parts in, some tools in it, all that kind of stuff. I always also throw in a rolled up, like I take like a T-shirt that I'm not using anymore, and I cut just like the front or the back off of it.
Oh, to show off the guns.
No, not the sleeves. I cut off the front or the back, and then use that like almost like an apron.
Okay.
So I can roll it up real small, fit it into one of the slots across, let's say, the top of the thingy.
Yep.
And then when I get to where I'm going, I can unravel it and put it on my lap. So as I'm cutting and sanding and shaving, all the bits fall onto the cloth thing.
Look at you.
And then I'm not getting it all over grandma's house or whatever. You know what I mean?
What a good boy.
I know. Well, that's, yeah. So something like that, bringing along if you want to, like, my wife loves to knit. And Lord knows at some point this holiday we'll be sitting and at her mom and dad's place, and everyone will be talking and having a good time, and she'll be knitting while she's doing it. And there's no reason that I can't just be sitting there working on a model or something at the same time. I mean, I'm not going to sit and paint probably necessarily, but I could easily be building.
Oh, I think you should bring out the airbrush. And
yeah, that'll go over super well.
Rattle cans.
Right, yeah. Be spraying some dull coat in the house. That'll definitely make everybody happy. Yeah, so I mean that's kind of a thing. Like, you can do something like that, and it's a little bit easier to do when you're ground traveling as far as that kind of stuff is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your RPG books and all that kind of jazz are not even an issue.
No,
when you're ground
you
traveling.
can bring your minis and stuff there, probably.
Yeah, I mean to some degree. I mean it's probably unlikely you're going to bring like a.
Probably not 5,000 dungeon tiles and stuff
right,
like that.
And you might bring a mat, maybe.
It depends on your car.
Honestly, that book thing that you got,
yes,
that would be perfect.
Yes.
Because it's a book, it closes up, and it's a big book, but still.
I saw a few that have put it in their traveling DM kit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that totally makes sense. No, that's a really super smart idea. As far as magic cards and things like that, I wouldn't bring a ton of magic cards with you on a plane. When you travel by ground, I think you can bring more. Certainly.
Oh, yeah, you should be able to.
Depends on how big your car is, I suppose.
Bring enough to share.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing that I've seen people do sometimes if they're like, let's say you're going to go home and visit some family or whatever, you got cousins and things like that, and maybe they used to play Magic and they don't anymore, or they never played it too much or whatever.
Right.
Like doing a, some people call it a pauper draft.
Okay.
Where like you can't have any like rare cards in there, but just a deck draft anyway. Like if you're the person who's the big Magic player in your household, or it could be Pokemon or whatever, I suppose, but Magic is kind of the big one. You could bring. Sometimes I've heard it also called as a cube draft too, which is basically like a certain amount of cards that you bring together and then you draft them. So then that way it's not like I'm going to bring my deck and I'm going to give you some sort of crap deck and then just crush on you. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a bunch of cards, and then we're going to get all set up, and then we will draft them where we kind of pass the cards around, and you go, no, I don't want that one. Yeah, I do want this one, or whatever. And we build our decks, and that's like part one of the game. And then part two is the actual playing. So bringing a bunch of cards, however you bring them for that kind of thing, could definitely make a fun situation, a fun game for multiple, you could nephews, cousins,
right.
nieces.
You could get more people into the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely, which we want to do. But yeah, it is also, I think, where are we at? I think it's important also to know your audience.
That's a very good point. Kind of like you were talking about the your codex, the kind of sketchy pictures. Probably not something to leave sitting on an open table.
Sure, right, yeah. And we do have that issue, obviously, with
smaller kids, maybe.
Well, yeah, little kids. There's certain types of games that are not great for kids. There's certain types of games that are not great for adults.
Right. And some games that you might like that might offend other people.
It's potential, sure, but even then, it might be a game that has absolutely no offense to it at all. Like, there's nobody that would be offended necessarily by Agricola, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing right. It's either Agricola or Agricola.
Agricola is right.
Agricola.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay. I've never played it, but I know it's basically about farming, like medieval farming.
No, that's the wine one, right?
Is that wine?
Yeah.
I'm not a big board gamer, but I just know it's not about like space or ninjas or what I mean. It's like it's about.
Admittedly, I'm not a big wine growing connoisseur, but it is an enjoyable game. But at the same time, I would not bring that out to have grandma and a bunch of other people play. It is
exactly.
Still
it's
fairly
kind of
heavy
a
game.
Little bit deep. You might have some younger kids that seeming to be interested, not too young because then you go the other way.
Right.
But like some teens. Maybe even early 20s who seem to be interested in tabletop gaming, and then you could be like, well, this is very popular, but it's a little bit more in depth, and we're going to sit and kind of I'll show you how to play it.
King of Tokyo is a good one,
especially for even younger kids in that situation.
Yeah. When I used to do scout camp, we did a winter camp, so because it's the middle of winter, there's not a lot to do.
Sure.
In the evening, so we would bring games. So I would bring board games, and I was always trying to find like the stuff that was age appropriate, but also wouldn't bore them when they looked at it. So yeah, the King of Tokyo, seeing giant monsters fighting is easy to teach, quick to play, and lots of fun. There's dice rolling and giant monsters, and
absolutely. I think that knowing just because it's a game that you like doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be a game that your family likes. So you kind of have to. I don't want to say that you need to aim low, but when you're dealing with somebody who's newer to the hobby in general or has never actually even played in the hobby style games, like a lot of my wife's family, like I said before, I brought over Let It Roll, and they enjoyed that quite a bit. But it's also like there's not really a theme. You know what I mean? It's a dice game, and you have to match some dice and whatever, and kind of push your luck and then get points and whatnot. But it's not just Yahtzee. But they love what the heck is it called? Skip Bow. That's and games like that, like very general kind of like card and games and things like that, which is fine. That's not for me. I do like a bit of. Generally, I prefer a little bit of story, a little bit of theme, a hook of some sort. But that's not necessarily like if you're like, hey, we're gonna sit down. I got this great game. You're gonna really love it, and then you bring out something from Cool Mini or Not, like Hate.
Right,
or,
they're going to
Rising Sun. That may not go well.
Right, they're going to make the same sound I just made about Skip Bow.
Right, very possibly, yes.
Like,
you're like, this is only going to take probably 45 minutes for me to get, teach you so that you can start the first turn. And
right,
and that's you're going to lose your audience. You got to know your audience. I think it's super important. You got anything else about traveling with games and going and trying to?
Nothing probably new, but just a reminder of. Be the ambassador while you're on the holidays.
Absolutely.
Don't go out and try to, destroy your nieces and nephews.
Right, yeah. When you're teaching somebody, try not to win. I'm not saying you're just going to completely give it up.
Right, but you don't have to use the max min
Right.
ultimate strategy. Try something like a new strategy that you haven't tried before, or something fun.
And everybody loves it when you're like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you guys, you can do this, and then you do that to them, and then they die. No one likes that.
Yeah,
That's actually not. I was kidding when I said everybody loves it. No.
No.
So definitely saying to your newer players in the family that you're trying to teach, be like, okay, well, you could do that, but have you thought about this? And if they tell you, no, I got it, I figured it out, then
Let them be. Yeah.
Let them be. That's fine.
But yeah, have fun. Have fun gaming.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about trying to have a good time with your loved ones
Right.
at the holiday and whatnot and all that stuff, and not just sit there and watch football on the TV or whatever, or
Right.
the Christmas Story. Like there's a channel that just runs it 24 hours.
Yes.
You can literally watch that once per year, I think. I'm not saying once. I'm just saying once per year. I'm going to give you that. I don't want to watch it anymore at all, personally. I've seen it enough. Thanks.
I don't get the appeal, but I know there's ones that will watch it repeatedly all day long.
As I get older, and I don't even have kids, but as I get older, I identify more and more with the dad. So there's that. I don't know.
Yes.
But I don't know if that's necessarily good.
Mm.
So, yeah. So holidays, coming up, traveling. Be smart with your traveling. Don't, sometimes luggage gets lost. So, again, think about what you're using as carry-on and what you're checking.
Or food gets spilled. And
yeah, that's also a good point,
right,
too.
yeah, so don't bring your collector's box set of ultimates, whatever,
Sure, right.
that you'll be just destroyed if it gets lost.
Someone's
or
going to get cranberry sauce on it or whatever, so that's also a potential to think about as well.
Protect your cards, games, if you can, with sleeves, all that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely, absolutely. Get maybe a festive gaming mat for your Magic cards. That'd be good. Something with about Santa, and I don't know. I don't know enough about Magic. All right, so so that's pretty much it. I hope that people who are going to be traveling for the holiday have a good time, and I hope that you're safe and you keep your games safe, and maybe teach some family and friends about some new games. Maybe create some new gamers. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
We didn't have a question this week or this episode. So if you do have a question, though, that you want us to ask on air or whatever and try to answer, definitely reach out to us through YouTube on the comments or through Twitter or through
Email,
which is podcast at imgamefor.com. And if we read your question on the air and stuff, then we'll shoot you a free limited edition T-shirt.
Ooh.
I know, yeah. There's several of them out there in the wild already.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got any questions or comments and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player or just aren't into the whole YouTube comment section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us at email or reach out to us via email at podcast@imgamefor.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And lastly, to find out more about the GameFor platform designed to connect tabletop gamers, please check out our website at www.imgamefor.com. That is www.imgamefor.com. Thanks.
Bye.